Hello, my dear students. I hope you all are in good health. I'm very glad to meet you all. Today, we are going to read a very beautiful story, The Best Christmas Present in the World, written by Michael Morpurgo. The very first lesson from the book Honeydew of Class 8. Before starting, let me introduce myself. I am Shoumi Chatterjee Nath, PGT English from Kendriya Vidyalaya, NTPC, Kahalgaon. First, let us meet the author, Sir Andrew Bridge Morpurgo. He was born on 5th October 1943. He is an English author, poet, and playwright who is best known for children's novels such as Warhorse. His work is mainly noted for its magical storytelling. That means the author has a beautiful capacity of storytelling. He has produced a number of notable works, among which some of his famous work are Warhorse, Little Foxes, Why the Little Whales Came. Before entering to the story, let us have a look to the setting or background of the story, as it has a vital role in the weaving of the story. In this story, there is a mention of a letter written by Mr. Jean Macpherson, a captain of the English army. The letter was written from the battlefield of First World War, and it was dated December 26, 1914. Now, if we brush up our knowledge of history, we remember that the First World War lasted from the year 1914 to 1918. Now, there is a mention of war between the British and the Germans in the year 1914 in this story. So, we can easily relate the dates that the war mentioned in the story between the British and Germans is in 1914, and the First World War also started from 1914, and the letter was having the date December 26, 1914. Now, the story begins like this. The author had bought a worn-out roll-top desk in a junk shop in Bridport. Now, what is the meaning of worn out? Worn out means in a damaged or poor condition. The roll-top desk was worn out due to fire and water. Now, why the roll-top desk was in such worn-out condition, that we are going to know later on. Here I am creating a suspense. The reason why the roll-top desk was in such worn-out or miserable condition, that we are going to explore. The author started working on the desk on the Christmas Eve. The entire story revolves around a letter. The author found a small black tin box inside a drawer of the roll-top desk. Now, that particular drawer was stuck up hard, and after a great effort, the author was able to open the drawer. And after opening the drawer, to his utter surprise, he found a small black tin box. And there was a notepaper sellotaped on the box, and written on it, Jim's last letter, received January 25, 1915, to be buried with me when the time comes. Now, when the author found the black tin box inside the drawer of the roll-top desk, he took it out and there he found a notepaper sellotaped on the box, and it was written on the notepaper, Jim's last letter. That means this letter was written by Jim's last letter, and the letter was received on January 25 in the year 1915. And this was written by the owner or the receiver of the letter. That's why the person had written, to be buried with me when the time comes. Now inside the box there was an envelope with the address Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport. So when the author opened the box, there he found an envelope. There was an address written on the envelope, Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport. And the date written was December 26, 1914. As I have already discussed that this letter, having the date December 26, 1914, this letter was written from the battlefield of First World War, and it was written by Mr. Jim Macpherson, a captain of the English Army. Now the envelope contained a letter. The envelope contained a letter. The letter was written by, as I have told, that it was written by Mr. Jim Macpherson, a captain of the English Army, and it was written to his wife, Connie. So the receiver or the owner of the letter was Connie, and the notepaper was written by Connie. She has put the letter with the envelope inside that tin box. Though the author knew that it is not a good habit to read someone else's letter, he couldn't control his curiosity and he read out the letter. Now the letter describes a wonderful incident. Now, what was that incident? We are going to explore. The English and the Germans were at war. They were in their respective trenches. What is the meaning of trench? Trench means a long, narrow hole dug in the ground for soldiers to hide in during enemy attacks. I'm repeating. Trench means a long, narrow hole dug in the ground for soldiers to hide in during enemy attacks. So, the English and the Germans were at war and they were in their respective trenches. It was the occasion of Christmas. Macpherson suddenly saw someone waving a white flag from the enemy side. Initially, he was hesitating, but gradually the opponent armies came close and they started wishing and greeting each other. Such a wonderful scene that the two enemy camps, they came close to each other. The soldiers, the opponent soldiers, they came close to each other and they started wishing and greeting each other on the occasion of Christmas. The German officer started conversing with Macpherson. His name was Hans Wolf and he was from Dusseldorf. He used to play cello in the orchestra before coming to the war. Now the name of the German soldier was Hans Wolf and he belonged to Dusseldorf. By profession, he was a cello player in orchestra before joining the war. Macpherson also introduced himself. He was a school teacher from Dorset. Now we can see how war has changed their ordinary lives. That a cello player and a school teacher, they both have become soldiers. Now, the most remarkable incident that was mentioned in the letter was that the two opponent armies played a football match. They celebrated the night by exchanging carols, food, and drinks. Now, in the midst of blood and dead bodies, it was really remarkable that the two opponent armies, they celebrated the Christmas by playing a football match. They forgot all their enmities and they exchanged carols, food, and drinks. Macpherson wrote that he would treasure those moments all his life. Rightly did Hans Wolf suggest that the world would be much better if the problems were resolved by a football match instead of war. Now these lines are very important and very touchy lines. What Hans Wolf suggested, that the world would be much better if the problems were resolved by a football match instead of war, because nobody wanted war. There was a note of hope in the letter, the hope that the war would end soon. Both the armies longed for peace. Nobody wanted war. Nobody wanted to kill each other. Both the armies, they longed for or they desired for peace. Now, after going through the letter, the author decided to return the letter to the owner. Now, who is the owner of the letter? The receiver or the owner of the letter was Mrs. G. Macpherson or Coney. So, the author followed the address. But after reaching to the address, he found that the house was burnt and the firemen rescued Mrs. Macpherson from the house. Now here we have explored the mystery why the roll-top desk was in such worn-out state due to fire and water. Because the roll-top desk belonged to none other than Mrs. G. Macpherson, whose house had been burned and she herself was rescued by the firemen. She was 101 years old and she was in a nursing home. The author went to the nursing home and was informed that she was rather confused those days. She was put in a conservatory, means she was put in a separated or an isolated room. She looked up at the author vacantly, means she looked up at the author indifferently, without having any expression. Her eyes were expressionless. But her eyes lit up when he called her Coney and giving her the letter explained how he had got it. But she was not listening to him. Her eyes were filled with tears as she thought that it was Jim who had returned, keeping his promise. So, initially, her eyes were expressionless. She was looking up at the author vacantly or indifferently. But when the author took her name as Coney, her eyes were lit up. And she was not at all listening to the author, what the author was explaining to her, how he had got the letter. Because she thought that it was Jim. She misinterpreted the author as her beloved husband Jim. She thought that Jim had returned from war, keeping his promise. She believed that she had got the best Christmas present in the world. Even though the story ends, it leaves some ripples in our mind to think over. Christmas plays a very important role throughout the story. In the beginning, the author starts walking on the roll-top desk on the eve of Christmas when he finds the letter. The date on the letter is 26 December 1914, just after the day of Christmas. Now, from the beginning of the story, we can find that Christmas is playing a vital role because the author starts working on the roll-top desk on the eve of Christmas, and from that desk he finds the letter, and the letter contains the date 26 December 1914, just after the day of Christmas. And when the author meets Mrs. Macpherson to present her the letter, she, means Connie or Mrs. Macpherson, misinterprets the author to be her husband Jim. And as it was the occasion of Christmas, Connie or Mrs. Macpherson, misinterpreting the author to be her husband, she considers him as the best Christmas present in the world. So, we can say that the title of the story, The Best Christmas Present in the World, is really justified. Another significant point is that the most unforgettable moment, as mentioned by Mr. Macpherson, was the celebration of the Christmas by the two opponent armies compels us to think that war can never be a solution. Yes, we can see the picture, we can see the scenario that in a battlefield, the two opponent groups, they forgot all their enmities. In the midst of blood and hatred, they celebrated the occasion of Christmas with love. They celebrated the occasion together. They all wanted peace. They longed for peace. Nobody wanted war. So, it compels us to think that war can never be a solution. I hope that you have enjoyed this story and have got the beautiful message that the author has conveyed. We all long for a healthy, wealthy, peaceful, and prosperous world. Thank you.